Welcome to the More Life Podcast, where creatives, problem solvers, and entrepreneurs talk about squeezing more out and finding meaning in this crazy thing we call life. Let's dive in. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the More Life Podcast. This week, I'm here with Jonathan Goodman, the founder and owner of Personal Trainer Development Center and author of many books. Jonathan, what's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, buddy.
So I know a lot of people might have heard of you, and I'm sure within your niche of personal development, a lot of people would have know who you are, personal fitness, all that type of stuff. But for those people that may not know who you are, give us a little bit of a synopsis of who you are and what your business is. All that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Personal Trainer Development Center is really just a platform just designed to level up the fitness industry in every way. So we are, we're like product and strategy agnostic. Yep. We're a community. So we created a content platform first. Okay. And to give you an idea just of like scale, I guess. So the PTDC, we've got over 1,000 articles, and we'll have 3 to 5 million people visiting that website every year. It's basically all personal trainers. If somebody gets in it that it's a personal trainer, they bounce off pretty quick. And so it's pretty niched and hyper niched. But then over the years, I've done a lot of research, phone calls, and then surveys and stuff like that to kind of figure out what the community needs. So we did stuff kind of backwards, right? Whereas a lot of people build a product and then they're like, yo, we need content to market this product.
Yes.
We created content in a platform and then listened to the community and basically figured out what they needed and then reverse engineered and built that. And so, like I said, I've written I've written a bunch of books. So I've written 11 books. Mm-hmm. But we created the first ever certification in business development course for online fitness training. And so that actually started
worldwide.
That's worldwide. So that started in 2013.
Okay.
We started training people how to build online fitness businesses. Now in the era of COVID, that of course has taken off even more, but even before COVID, we've helped over 35,000 personal trainers, nutrition coaches worldwide in 87 countries that we know about. Basically, everywhere people speak English.
I'm going to even back you up and pause you just so I can catch everybody up. Your core business started when?
2011. So I was a personal trainer from 2005, second year university. I became a personal trainer, and I was a trainer at the university gym from second to fourth year. And then when I finished university, 2007, I started personal training full time. And I personal trained full time, which for anybody who knows the industry knows it's like 12 to 14 hour days. I was in the gym at 6:30 in the morning. I left at 9:30 at night. Mm-hmm. I would train 12 to 13 hours straight often.
And this is associated with the gym, or you're like private yourself?
This is associated with the gym. So I was an independent contractor, and then I graduated and I became the senior trainer. And so I got a bit of a salary in addition, and I was doing some hiring, onboarding the trainers. But in that industry, there's a ceiling, and there's a pretty significant ceiling that I hit when I was 23 years old. Okay. Of basically, you can't make any more money unless you go and open your own gym, or you find something else in the industry. So,
which every personal trainer I know of had the dream of I'm doing this now, and eventually I'm going to open my own gym.
Which is not a good idea for a lot of people. And gyms are tough. Profit margins in conventional gyms are 15-20% if you do it well.
Wow.
So gyms are tough, man. You got a lot of overhead with leases. You got a lot of overhead with equipment, with leasing equipment.
Not a lot of room for errors.
Not a lot of room for errors. A lot of people go into it just simply, they don't understand lease negotiations, location, scouting, any of that kind of stuff, and they just lose their shirt pretty quick. And if you add an online component, you can easily bump up those margins to 30-40%. But I knew very early on that I didn't want to open up a gym. I didn't know why, but I kind of always knew that it wasn't for me. And so I started just searching, what do you do if you trade your time for money directly? Is you start searching at a certain point for things outside of that. So
yes.
I didn't know what it was going to be, man. I didn't even know it was going to be in the fitness industry. I knew I loved clients.
Yeah.
But
how did you take the risk to be online? Because again, 2011, of course, the advent of the internet had already been there a decade or 20 years by then, or close to it. But how do you go from people have been doing this? I think of in my head, Jillian Michaels DVDs, you know, stuff like my wife, my girlfriend at the time would have. That's like, or Bowflex. That's the only thing you would think about of like online, a full course online. And not only that, for the consumer end, you're thinking, no, I'm going to teach people how to do this online. What's the genesis of that?
I was so optimistically ignorant about everything you just said. I mean, I can talk you through the genesis of it, but keep in mind, like, humans are really good at post-rationalizing and creating plausible sounding narratives of events after they've happened in order to describe them and like smooth out a very crooked line. And so I didn't know any of these things, which I think was my biggest advantage. And I think is something that people don't have as an advantage now, is they're not ignorant enough. They know too much about something. And I actually find that concept fascinating. I call it the ignorance quotient. Like, can you quantify the point where you know enough about something where you can move forward, and anything more that you learn about that thing would actually be a disadvantage, because it would cause you to second guess what you're talking about. And I think that you can, because if you understand fear, like Seneca once said, if you wish to what was it exactly? Seneca once said, if you wish to stave off all fear, imagine that the worst that can happen most definitely will happen. And so, and then you understand risk mitigation and asymmetrical risk, particularly, whereby you just say, okay, well, what if the worst case scenario could go wrong? What is that? Can I withstand that? If I win, is it going to be asymmetrical risk? Basically means that, like, if you win, you're going to win really, really big, and if you lose, it's not going to be a huge deal. And so is this one of those situations? And can you afford to lose? Basically, you want to avoid catastrophic failure always. You don't want to be taken out of the game, but like, you should, like, I've lost a lot, I failed a lot. Like, you should be able to fail in a lot of different ways. So I knew so little, but I kind of knew that, like, I wasn't going to fail. Like, I could always go back to personal training.
True.
Right? So the genesis of it, though, was like, I went to the library. I mean, what do you do when you don't know something? Now you just Google it, which is like bad.
Hey, theory.
Well, but the issue with it now is it's so easy to produce information that the quality of information can't be trusted in a lot of cases.
In a lot of cases, especially like
10 years ago.
Yeah. A decade ago, you could not have been so misguided. And now people are using WebMD so much, and they have all this built up anxiety of something that's necessarily not factual.
WebMD is like 5 stages ahead. I mean, I'm talking like Joe Schmo, who you find on Instagram or YouTube, that shoots it with their phone or does it in the podcast in their office, like we're doing. But like, the idea that, I mean, this was really in 2009, so like more than 10 years ago, I would go to the library. I mean, this is actually how it happened. I go to the bookstore, and I found all the books on multiple streams of income, passive income, and I wrote down the names of the authors, and then I walked across the streets of the library, and I checked out those books, and I borrowed them, and I started reading them. Well, the sunk cost of writing a book and getting a book published back then, self-selected for people, at least, if nothing else, more serious and invested in their information. I mean, you had to be doing that for a while. You had to put some money into it.
Yeah.
And
nowadays, you don't got to do any of that stuff.
But you should look for it if you're looking to learn. Like, you should look, whoever you're looking to learn from, you should look for indicators of skin in the game, which is an Nassim Taleb thing that he talked about. But it's this idea of there's buy-in. Like, is the person you're learning from, have they ever actually could they disappear tomorrow?
Yeah.
And would you even notice? And would anybody even notice? Right? Have they invested a lot of money and effort and time into what they're doing? And that alone should help you weed out most of the bad information. I mean, you can immediately go on somebody's website and look, okay, well, if they've got a nice website with half decent branding and they've produced anything that's physical, immediately now, I'm going to pay attention to you. If you're like an Instagram account,
that's nothing.
And you don't even have a website, or you have a website that looks like you haven't touched it for 10 years, and you've never produced anything, except for, I don't know, maybe like a coaching program that I can find.
Yeah.
It's like, you might be good,
Yeah.
but you also might not.
I'm dealing with that right now. I'm looking to hire a social media marketer, and somebody happened to reach out to me. I haven't posted a listing or anything like that. And on LinkedIn, they reached out to me and say, hey, this is what I do for businesses, specifically for agencies. There's no website, only Instagram account with some of the stuff that she's done, but I can't verify it. Like, I can't see
So I wouldn't even look at them, not saying anything about like they're bad.
Right.
But it is simply too difficult these days to make educated choices from a wide pool of sources, that you have to figure out a way to cull that pool immediately using very strict objective guidelines, and then make a really good decision between no more than 5. I mean, there's just no way. Like Google social media agency for agencies.
Yeah.
How do you possibly differentiate? But if you can set up a few different guidelines of that, okay, well, like, let's look at who they've worked with. Let's look at what they've produced. Have they written a book about their ethos?
Right. Have anyone else interviewed them or like shared some of their credibility with them to say
somebody that you trust, that you've been given to trust? Have they lent their trust to that person?
Yeah.
Which is also, to be honest, valuable. Like, you can run into trouble with that because there's a lot
people
of
do that
There's a lot of networks that are kind of pay to play, and everybody kind of,
5 years ago, that was everything. It was all about who you can guess blog posts right for, and then they would then reciprocate, and it would be a little bit of an old boys club. But let's go back to, you are taking huge initiative on yourself to learn not just about entrepreneurship and business ownership, but also multiple streams of income, and how do we maybe generate an idea, because you were a blank slate. You were doing this one thing, but like, I know the traditional route of what I was doing is not necessarily for me and what I want to be, my next step. So how do you still get to like that idea of like, we're going to do something for trainers?
Yeah. I tried a lot of different things. I wrote 2 business plans for Smoothie Operations. I studied,
which again would have been ahead of its time.
Yeah, it was a delivery thing. I wanted to use the like bubble tea sealing things and actually have a dietitian on staff who, a family, like a rich family, could call. You always want to sell to rich people.
Of course.
Like a rich family could call or tell you what's up with their kids, with their parents and their needs, and then the dietitian would design a smoothie for them and deliver them to their house, like their smoothies for the week, that they'd keep in the fridge, and they'd be sealed, and they take one every day. I still don't think it's a bad idea, but you need like a really, anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm not doing it. Somebody else can have that one. But and actually the sealing machine for like the bubble tea thing is cheaper now, so you might be able to make it work. Anyway, doesn't matter. But then I looked into residential real estate investing for a while, didn't do that. And then I came across a book, like just over the course of my reading, that was Robert G. Allen. Multiple Streams of Income was the book. I still have it. It's like tattered in yellow. It's really fun. And in that book, one of the chapters was on something called infopreneuring, which, like, keep in mind, 2009, this stuff was going on. Certainly, people were selling information, but it was underground.
Yeah.
If you nobody shot you a Facebook advertisement inviting you for a 15-minute phone call to sell you on a $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 mentorship to learn how to do this stuff.
But for reference, Facebook would have been 2 years old.
There you go. So it just wasn't in your face. It was happening. And the idea sounded really interesting to me. I was like, sell information. Okay, that's cool. Like, I can try that. And it gave the advice to read a book. Or to write a book, sorry. And the idea was, if you write a book, there was this image where the middle of it was like this circle, and around it was all of these different income streams. And the idea was like the center of the universe was write a book. And then all these income streams will open themselves up to.
Right, like speaking engagements and all these different other content
advertising, digital product.
Yeah.
Everything that you can do with a mailing list.
Right.
Renting, I mean, I've never rented my mailing list, but like renting a mailing list, to creating additional offers, to book, to, I mean, tons of different stuff, right? And so the advice in that book was to write a book about something you know about. I was like, I know about personal training.
Yeah.
And so what I did is I was training clients at that point, and I was running some in-service for our staff, and I was hiring staff as well. And I just had a page on the back of my clipboard, personal trainers, I had a clipboard, right? So I had a page on the back of my clipboard. And on that page, throughout the day, for months, all that I did is I would just write down a bullet point of what I would do. So if somebody asked me a question about a friend of theirs that was interested, I wrote down the question. If I was interviewing somebody, I wrote down the questions they asked. I wrote down the questions I would ask.
Genius.
If I, everything, right? Like picked up a piece of garbage on the floor, I would write it down. And then what I would do is I'd go home that night. And this was, the hardest period of my life because, I was working like 6:30 in the morning till 9:30 at night.
Yeah.
And then I get home like 9:45 because I lived reasonably close. I could walk to the gym. Mm-hmm. And I'd sit down at my computer and I'd take out that piece of paper in my clipboard and I'd write in more detail all of the bullet points out of just how I did it, what I thought about it. And it was super messy. And that would sometimes be till 2 or 3 in the morning. And so that process started in 2009. And then I had to go find an editor for that book. Mm-hmm. So where do you find an editor? Well, I don't know. But
so you basically created a user profile and then you answered that person's question. Like there was like a super person, so. Right? Like you had all this information from all your different clients.
Yeah.
And then you that became like the end user. How could I help? If there was like a ultimate client for a trainer, mm-hmm. I'm going to answer all these questions. Look at all these different things.
But also for, this book was for personal trainers, right?
Right.
And so what do you, trainers deal with so much random stuff across the day. I'd have 5 minutes in between clients and I'd have to eat, I'd have to get caffeine, and I'd have 3 people asking me a question while I'm meeting my next client. You got to be like, boom, 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 boom. So what do you do when you're flying between those? How do you make the most out of it? Simple things like I'd create, I had all of these resources for clients on different injuries, different training modalities, nutrition. And just as I was doing my own research, anything good that I'd ever come across, I'd keep a computer database of that resource, but I'd also print out a copy of it. And I try to keep, on every single question that I was asked, I try to keep 3 different levels of information, from a magazine article to a newspaper to a research paper, mm-hmm. because we had everybody from teenagers to doctors.
Right.
So somebody would ask me a question, and whenever they'd ask me a question, I'd answer it, but I'd make sure I'd give them something to take away with my business card stapled to it.
That makes sense.
And then I just made a note on my clipboard, and then I'd print out another copy from my database, put it in my mm-hmm. file folder, right, on that thing. Little stuff like that made a world of difference. And so the book was written. I had to find an editor for the book. How do you find an editor? I don't know. Well, other people have written fitness books. So mm-hmm. I went to the bookstore again. I picked up every fitness book. I wrote down the authors of all of the names.
Wow.
And I Googled them, and I found the email of as many as I could, and I cold emailed the authors of the books, and I asked to be introduced to their editor. And if somebody did that to me, I'd get back to them. Right. So almost everybody got back to me, and I ended up hiring one of them, and she was great. She worked with me on a bunch of books. She was my editor on that book.
So you followed the advice of a book to write a book.
I followed the advice of a book to write a book, and then to find the editor to help me make the book better, I just went to other people who had already written a book, and I said, "Who is your editor?" And they told me, and then I just hired her. But then, of course, you gotta figure out a way to get people to buy your book. And so at that point, self-publishing was pretty new, but mm-hmm. still possible. So you use something like CreateSpace, but it was still pretty underground. And so I self-published it, and having a physical book immediately set me apart from anybody else doing anything. And so at that point, I built up a bit of a network because, of course, asking these other experts mm-hmm. for their editor was a great way to get it on the ground floor. Yeah. I'd ask them for their address. Most got back and gave me their address. And then I sent all of them a free copy of the book, but I don't just send them a book, because if you just send somebody a book, nobody wants to read it, because nobody wants to read a book about stuff that they already know about, which are most of the people I'm sending this to.
Yeah.
But I wrote a form letter for everybody and then I would individualize it for each person about something they did or something they impacted, and then I would make reference to one section in the book in the letter. Then in the book, I'd put a sticky note in that section with an arrow pointing down, and I might even underline the book and whatever it is. At that point, they're all going to crack open the book and at least look at it. And it's, again, having something physical. A lot of people were asking these people how to do this personal training thing. They didn't want to give advice because it would just take them too long, and it's really easy to say, go buy this book. So they all started to say, go buy this book. Around that same time, I was like, well, I'm going to start a website because, like, I've noticed a lot of other people write about personal training a little bit here and there on their websites that are mainly about fitness, but there's no central gathering point for it. So I created a website, and I already had a book that was 88,000 words of content.
And what year was this?
This was 2011.
2011.
So the book and the website came out 2011. I started writing the book 2009.
And when you self-published it, was it reasonably successful, or was it?
Did better than I thought it would.
Okay.
Yeah, it did better than I thought it would.
If it did better than what you thought it would.
I mean, it sold some copies. For sure. And then it started to kind of trend upwards because I was using the content in the book to fill the website, my own articles, and then I was syndicating other people's content on other people's blogs. And so before I could afford people to write for me or really do much editing, I was able to go to people who had written good stuff about personal training and basically just say to them. So I created a website with a professional sounding name, which everybody wants to make it look like they're recognized by some official body, right? You don't actually have to be an official body. It doesn't matter if I was like a single dude in my 1-bedroom apartment in Toronto doing this at 2 a.m. The reality of it was, this was the Personal Trainer Development Center.
The personal trainer development center.
And so I would just take somebody, I would email you, Bart, and I'd be like, yo, Bart, I loved your article on this thing. I'd really love to be able to publish that on the Personal Trainer Development Center. Here's how it works. Basically, I'll take it from you. You don't have to do anything. 100% hands off. You're the sole author. I'll take it from you. You can give it a different headline. You can approve if you want. You don't have to. I'm going to give it a different headline. I'm going to reformat it a bit, clean it up, whatever, put some pictures on it, and then publish it on the PTDC, and I'll let you know when it's live. Is that cool? Everybody said yes.
Of course.
At one point, I started paying people $100 for it, but like everybody said yes. And these were all people that had pretty decent niche platforms. Not big, but like pretty decent niche platforms. After you do this 2 or 3 times, all of a sudden they're promoting it.
Right.
Which means they're sending people to my website, and then they're entering in my email list and whatnot. And then I become a bigger and bigger deal. But that was it. And then the final part that I think grew it from the ground, because I always love these little, I basically went, okay, well, who has, and you can't quite do this anymore, but I basically went, who has the audience that I want? There aren't really educators that have any kind of audiences, but there's a lot of trainers that have a lot of people who they're connected with. So a lot of bloggers at the time, like fitness bloggers. I was already kind of syndicating their stuff, so I was friends with them on Facebook, and I would just go down their friends list of everybody who looked like they were a trainer or wrote that they were a trainer in their thing, and I started just adding them as friends. You can't quite do that anymore, but you kind of can, right? So immediately now what I was doing was and I said hi to every single one of them and opened up a conversation with every single one of them. And now, of course, they're going to see my articles that I publish on my Facebook, so they're going to be in it. They've already self-selected themselves as people who enjoy building community and taking part in social media for fitness content. Right? It's like, if you want to build your Instagram, what's the best way to do it? Well, go to other people who do the same type of thing as you and build relationships with folks who interact in the comments. Because those are the type of people who like to interact in comments.
Those are, that's called social media mining, right? Like, people do that all the time, especially on Twitter, on LinkedIn. That's a great way to grow and to insert yourself into a community. I also want to dive in on that even a little bit more, because you do a really good job. I don't know if it was intentional or if it just happened, of kind of being the hub for this community in terms of personal fitness trainers. And I'm now the resource hub. So what are some of the things that you do to enhance that or to make that or incentivize that?
I mean, getting as many people involved in what you do, the better. So the best way to me to become kind of the hub about a thing is, the fitness industry is unique in that it's a very fractured industry. There's obviously a lot of factions in it. You CrossFit, you bodybuilder, you Zumba, you whatever, Pilates. But there's also internationally and even nationally, all the ways that certifications and accreditations work worldwide is different everywhere. But what's constant is that somebody certified by one body largely sticks to that body. And a lot of these certification companies are now owned by large private equity firms or multiple layers of private equity firms. And they pump a lot of money to it, and they're trying to disrupt the industry. So they're going negative on the front end, trying to sell their education on the back end. So they're going very far out of their way to try and shield their audience from all of the other education out there.
Right.
Because these companies don't make any money on their initial certifications. They make money on their follow-up education. And so we kind of came along and we're like, we're Switzerland. We're just going to talk to everybody. It doesn't matter where you are. And it turns out that was a very good decision. And the way that we did that was just built relationships with everybody, and getting everybody involved in our thing.
Yeah.
If you involve somebody in your process, if you make them look good by quoting them, by sharing their work, every Friday we do a Follow Friday of other people in our industry. In my books, I co-authored a lot of them.
Yep.
Co-authoring them means that I hire a ghostwriter. The ghostwriter and I plan out the entire book. This person is basically interviewed.
Yeah.
Right? Super easy for them. But now they're a co-author on the book. And in the books, like in Ignite the Fire, in that original book, we did a second version of it. And it still sells really well today. It's in multiple languages even. And that was, there's over 90 people quoted and mentioned in that book. And that was a very purposeful thing. That was like, if I have a thought about how something works, I'm not smart enough to be the first person to ever have that thought.
Makes sense.
You can't think that your shit don't stink. Like, put your ego aside. Like whatever you know, you're not brilliant enough to be the only person who knows. Somebody else has already thought and published something about that.
Right.
Go find that person and quote them.
That's an opportunity for collaboration.
It's an opportunity for collaboration because now that person is a node on your network.
Yeah.
Right? Now when you publish the book, you send a copy of your book to that person and you write a sticky note and you say, hey, look, it's you. And you do an arrow down and you underline their name.
Yeah.
They're going to share that everywhere because of how good it makes them.
You just tapped their audience.
You've just tapped their audience, right? And if you have a good title for your book and a decent, sales page for it, if it's a book, but you could do this with anything.
Yeah.
Any content platform, any social media platform. If you're the one who goes out of your way to engage other people in your community and become that gathering point, the barrier to entry in this is so low because so few people do it that it's actually really easy. All you got to do is just be the person inviting the other person to do something.
That's actually ingenious.
Like nobody does that. Everybody's so busy doing their own things. Like, I have to build content. It's like,
content's around.
Dude's already built content.
Yeah, just find the people who already have built content and partner with them. Invite them to what you're doing.
We've been publishing a best content. It was best articles. Now it's best content of the fitness industry.
Yeah.
At 6 a.m. every Sunday for the last 9 years. We've published a list. And it's unbiased. It's chosen by a group of people, 2 of which we pay and then the rest are volunteers, that scout the industry and find content. And they're not associated with our business on purpose because it needs to be unbiased. My only instructions are like, find the best stuff. I don't care if they're competitors of ours. I don't care if I like them. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Find the best stuff because the best material needs to be shared. And then our team, after it's shared every single week, sends a message to everybody who's had their material shared saying, hey, great work. Your Instagram post, your video, your article was chosen as one of the best of the week in the fitness industry.
Right.
What do you think every single person does?
They're going to share that because it's why would I not share something that makes me look so good?
And not only that, now when I go and reach out to that person because I want to build a connection, they've all heard of my business. They've all been a part of my business. They've all benefited from my business. All you got to do is just be the person to do that. Anybody can do this.
So
What are the best cheese resources from cheese aficionados for my cracker business every week, right? Like, come on, Skippy, you can do this. It's not, there are groups for everything.
It's true. How did you get to like, were you trying to be savvy with marketing, or were you just trying to think of things logically? I feel like you're kind of just a person who would sit and think of like practical and logical ways.
No,
how can I
never.
actually connect with people? And you're not like studying marketing tips and like, how am I going to
not studying
gain
marketing
access,
tips. I mean, I've read a lot about copywriting and marketing, but I'm more interested in things like evolutionary psychology than I am marketing, because I think most everything written about marketing in the last 10 years has been pieces of absolute shit. It's basically just reworking stuff from the 1950s and the 1960s, to be honest. Really what matters is psychology and understanding why humans operate the way they do, and that's why evolutionary psychology and behavioral psychology is actually what matters. I don't know, to answer your question. I never really understood people. Growing up, I always felt like, this is going to sound horrible, but I always felt like other people were kind of dumb, and I didn't quite get why they were doing what they were doing, because it just didn't make sense to me. And I'm so gloriously unemployable for that fact.
That would be a very unemployable trait.
I'm disagreeable at the core, which is a very good quality for somebody who runs their business, and a very good quality of somebody to have on your team. Actually, you really want at least one person, disagreeable person on your team, because you want somebody who, even if they're not right, is going to challenge you to figure out whether you're actually right or not. You know, so if I think that something is true, and then I have a disagreeable person who says that it's not true, it's going to force me to figure out whether that thing is actually true or not.
Right.
Which is really beneficial. And so, I mean, I didn't get good grades growing up. I never felt like I belonged.
Yeah.
I really struggled. And then personal training, when I started to... Personal training is something that I think a lot of more young people should get into, not because it's necessarily a really good career track, but because there are very few industries that you can do as like a 21 and 22 and 23-year-old, where the most successful people in your city pay you to spend time with you.
I got you.
I mean, my clients were the Associate Dean of Medicine at the University of Toronto, the Chief of Psychiatry at Sunnybrook Hospital, real estate developers. I mean, some of the most accomplished people.
Yeah.
And these people were paying me $100 an hour, 2 to 3 times a week, to mentor me.
Yeah.
Right? And my journey actually started because one of my clients, this chief of psychiatry, who's still a friend of mine, we still talk. I haven't trained for 10 years, and we still talk every once in a while. And he walked into the gym one day, and he was always late, so he was 5 minutes late. And he walked up to me on the gym floor, and I said, "Idiot, go get changed, you're late."
Yeah.
And he took out a book out of his bag and handed it to me. And he said, "You're not going to be my personal trainer much longer." And the book was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Yeah. And he says, "You know, I wish somebody," he says, "I don't know if it's true or not, but I think you're destined to do something pretty interesting. I don't think," I mean, I'd been training him for a couple years at this point. I mean, we talk about everything, business,
of course, as you would,
politics, religion, like, and he just said, "I think I see something in you. You seem to just be different and think different and be more interested. And I wish that somebody had given this book to me when I was younger. And I won't be upset if you're not my personal trainer afterwards."
Right.
And that was the first like book on professional development or whatever that I got.
I read that book, and I remember thinking, man, I wish I read this as a teenager.
Right.
And it's one of those books where it kind of just lays it so simply.
It's so simple.
It's so simple, and it's like, oh, there really are two different worlds happening at one time. People who see things one way, and people who see things another way. And in terms of like young people and growing and developing, I wanted to kind of end our talk with maybe you speaking to like what you're just doing right now in terms of what can young people who are looking for the quote unquote illustrious lifestyle. My motto is always nothing worth having is easy or cheap. You know what I mean? There's always, if you want something.
I wouldn't say that. I'd fight you on that one.
You would?
I'd fight you on that one.
If I really wanted something, I don't think it'd be cheap. I think most of the things that we really want in life would be like,
Probably
I have to work hard for it.
Probably my favorite possession that I own is my watch.
The Casio?
It's a $20 Casio watch. The beautiful thing about Casio is that they have not redesigned. They were the first digital watch, and they have not redesigned.
It ain't broke, don't fix it.
50 years.
Is it 50 years old?
It's like the 70s.
Wow.
50 years.
50 years old and 70s. Okay, I feel old
50
now.
years, you have not... How is that not such a lesson in the beauty of simplicity and just, it does what it needs to do. It lasts for a long time. It's waterproof. It tells the time. It sets an alarm, and it has a timer. That's all a watch needs to do.
It's like that Timex one that everyone had.
How beautiful and eloquent is that story? And you can buy it for $20. The reality of it is, in the world that we live in today, there are very few things that add any kind of marginal improvement, quality of life, or happiness or joy that wealthy people can buy that middle to lower class people can't. Basically, every car that you're going to have is going to be able to go fast enough and be reliable enough to drive on any highway that we have.
Very true.
We all, almost everybody is going to have a dishwasher and a washing machine. They're going to live in a shelter with heating. I mean, the only thing that I can really think of is private air travel.
Right, that's a very big gap between.
That's a very big gap, and that makes a very big improvement in quality of life. Basically, nothing else does. What I think really matters these days is, and to answer your question, I'm going to answer your question a few different ways. One is to study the science of happiness.
I agree with that. Yeah.
It is a real science, and if you study it, you will very quickly be able to look past all of the idiots on Instagram who know nothing about fulfillment and happiness because they're 20 years old and single and have never struggled for anything in their life, telling you how to own the day with their morning rituals, celebrating their matcha tea and their meditation and their
I know 20 Instagram accounts off the top of my head.
And their gratefulness journaling with 3 different journals. And I don't know about you, man, but I wake up in the morning and my kid's jumping on me and opening my eyes, saying, "Open your eyes, open." Like there ain't no journaling going on, right? There ain't no like matcha tea brewed in the traditional sense going on, and so
hand grinding your coffee.
Right, because it's smoother that way. But the idea is, if you actually understand these things, you understand how to invest your money much better, and it's often actually cheaper. For example, a lot of weekend getaways, even local weekend getaways, lends way more to joy and happiness than big expensive holidays.
I just came back from a 3-day one up in Midland, Ontario, which is not very glamorous.
I know Midland, Ontario, because I own a rental property there.
And we didn't have really good Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic. We threw axes, went for walks, and walked in the rain. And I think the last time I had a big vacation, it was more stressful thinking about all the things you had to do and all the pictures you wanted to take and all the walking you had to go find these specific tourist locations. And then you go away for 3-4 days and you find an oasis in tranquility of doing nothing and just like, wow, this is just company, Scrabble.
Well, and so repeating pleasurable events often is way more enjoyable than one big pleasurable event. Experiences over things. What's interesting is that even negative experiences are over the long term more pleasurable than buying a thing because of our fondness for retelling stories about how bad something was.
That's true.
Because it makes a good story, how shit the experience was.
Yes.
It's actually, we actually enjoy negative experiences better than like buying a car.
One day I'm going to tell you my Turkish bath story when I was in Turkey. Because it was brutal.
I mean, your mistake was that you went to a Turkish bath and didn't look what it was beforehand.
That's exactly right. I never looked exactly
I've been
what it
in
was.
enough gym locker rooms to know something about that experience.
I'm like, I'm in Turkey. I'm going to do the Turkish bath.
No, bad idea.
Bad idea.
Turkish coffee, also bad idea.
Yeah, that's very, very strong.
Yeah. No, I don't really
flavorful.
want black paste to suck through my teeth like a baleen whale.
Yes.
No, yeah, I buy that. So that's number one, is to really look into and there's Happiness Hypothesis by Jonathan Haidt is a good book for that if you're looking for like a resource. Daniel Gilbert, Stumbling on Happiness is another great one. I think the two things that every single human being should study and understand is how money works and how happiness works. And so I would look deep into both of those two things. In terms of like how to get started, is I've got this thing called the freedom number, which is just something that a mentor passed down to me. But the basic premise is figure out how much money we don't fear things because they're things we should fear. We fear things because we don't understand them. The stories we make up in our minds about how things might be when we don't understand them are way worse than the objective truth of the situation.
Right.
And so, again, the way to stave off all fear, in that Seneca quote, going back to that, is to make the unknown known, is to define the problem. So how much money do you actually need is probably the best thing that a young person or somebody wanting to like make a shift in a career to an entrepreneurial venture and figure out whether they can do it is to do, because freedom is actually providing yourself the opportunity to fail. And the only way that you can provide yourself the opportunity and the space and the mental clarity to fail is to understand what failure is and whether or not you can absorb it. And so how much money do you need? How much money do you need for your rent, for your mortgage, any dependents, food, right? Like, what's that number? And it's actually a very simple calculation. So what's that number? Say it's $5,000 a month, right? Okay.
There are many ways to make $5,000 a month.
Well, and so how much money are you making? Let's say you're employed in a job right now and you're making more than that. Well, that's cool. So now you can maybe not do as much extra stuff in your job, if you don't have the time. And you can look at a side hustle. And you can say, this isn't ultimately what I want to do because it's not as scalable. It's not, passive, any of those like dreams. But what can I do that is the highest yield activity right now to get to that $5,000 a month with my side hustle? For almost everybody, that's going to be some sort of coaching, some sort of social media management, some sort of like go to 5 people, go to 5 local businesses and tell them you're going to take over their Facebook ads. Ask them to pay you $1,000 a month. Once they sign on, go to Coursera. Take a course on Facebook ads.
Exactly. Step 1, get the money. Step 2, go find out how to do it.
Go find out how to do it, run their Facebook ads. And now what's interesting is now because you've defined the problem and you know how much money you need, now you know when you have that amount of money, which allows you to step away from all of your constraints, right? Step away from your job and take that risk because you know you can absorb it, right? You have that money.
Type of risk.
And now you have all this space to really build.
That's awesome.
Whatever you want to build. But the first step is that. And basically everybody can go, 2 weeks with free resources on the internet.
There's so much free stuff. There's so many opportunities right there.
Gain enough skills. Like, what do you like to do? Do you like to play guitar? I
think during COVID, Skillshare was free for 90 days. You had 3 months to take as many courses as you want.
Crazy.
Like all these different courses. Like there's so many opportunities.
I say to people in the fitness industry, they're like, oh, how do I I have these things and I'm a trainer and how do I stop doing it? I'm like, well, you know how gyms work, you know how trainers work. All you need to do is give yourself a basic skill set in content production and advertisements and local advertisements. You can get that for free, or you can buy a very cheap course to learn how to do that. Learn how to use Canva. Learn how to use Facebook advertising.
And you can make it work.
And you call up gyms and are like, pay me 500, pay me $1,000 a month.
I'll do it for you.
And I'll do it for you because none of them want to do it. The same thing with dentists, chiropractors, whatever.
It doesn't matter what it is. I think there's
You
a
don't
lot
need
of
many.
That's the thing. People think they need a lot of things, and I think what people need to realize, like, the doors are available for us to walk through if we're looking for them, and if you're being intentional into what you actually want, and you've taken the time to actually write out those skills. I want to honor your time, John. Thanks so much for being here. Tell people where they can find you, where they can look you up, and read more about you.
Oh, yeah, we're kind of an entrepreneurial crowd. I don't know. If you're interested in the fitness industry, check out Personal Trainer Development Center. Anything else? I have nothing for you. I hope you enjoyed this. You can go on Amazon. I've got a book on social media marketing called Vionomics. You can go on Amazon and get that. But I hope you enjoyed this.
Awesome. This has been the More Life Podcast. Thanks, guys.